the widow who became sheriff, and brought law to the Wild West's deadliest town. Eliza Kane rode her horse slowly through the dusty desert, the sun burning high above her head. The wind swept across the dry plains, carrying the smell of sagebrush and old smoke. Her horse, a strong chestnut mare named Daisy, snorted and stamped her hooves, uneasy about the long ride. Eliza held the reins tightly, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the small town of Redspire lay. She had heard stories about this place, stories of danger, outlaws, and strange things in the desert. But she had no choice. She had to find answers and protect her late husband's ranch. Her husband had died months ago. The pain of losing him still sat heavy in her chest, but she had learned to live with it. She had learned that life on the frontier demanded courage and quick thinking. Now, as a widow, she carried both grief and resolve. She would face Redspire and whatever dangers waited there. Redspire appeared as a cluster of wooden buildings in the distance. At first glance, it looked like a regular western town, dusty streets, weathered signs, and a few wagons. But there was something different. Tiny lights hovered above some of the buildings, and strange humming machines moved quietly along the roads. Eliza narrowed her eyes. The town was not just wild. It was a mix of old and new, a place where technology met the frontier. As she rode into town, she felt eyes watching her. Townsfolk peeked from doorways and windows. Some whispered to each other, pointing at her as she passed. She ignored them. Her mind was on the tasks ahead. She had to understand the town and the threats that lurked there. The first sign of danger came quickly. A group of men blocked the street, their horses stamped and reared, eyes glinting. They were armed with unusual weapons, pistols that glowed faintly and carried a strange hum. Eliza recognized them as outlaws, the kind that did not follow law or reason. She stopped Daisy, keeping a calm but firm grip on her reins. "You lost, lady," one of them sneered, stepping forward. His eyes were hard and cold. The others laughed, their weapons shifting slightly in their hands. Eliza looked at them carefully. She did not show fear. She remembered her husband's words, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is facing fear and acting anyway." "I'm not lost," she said quietly. "I'm here for Redspire." The leader narrowed his eyes. "Redspire, huh? You might want to turn back. Things are dangerous here." Eliza shook her head. "I make my own path. Step aside or face me." The tension in the street grew. The outlaws laughed and raised their weapons. But Eliza was faster. She pulled a small device from her belt, a gift from her husband, a pistol modified with a mix of old mechanics and new energy tech. She aimed carefully. The air pulsed with the sound of her shot. A bright beam shot from the weapon, striking a barrel nearby. The barrel exploded in a burst of smoke and sparks. The outlaws jumped back, startled. In that instant, Eliza spurred Daisy forward. With swift movements, she passed them, the town now open in front of her. She could hear the outlaws shouting, but she did not look back. She knew she had to reach the center of town quickly. At the town square, Eliza saw the sheriff's office. A small wooden building with a single star above the door, shining faintly. But the sight inside stopped her. The sheriff, an older man known to all, lay slumped on the floor. His eyes were wide, frozen in fear. A strange glow hovered above him, fading as Eliza approached. She knelt beside him. He was gone. Something had killed him, but not like a normal gunshot. The air felt heavy, and the town seemed darker, even under the sun. Redspire was now without law, and chaos could follow. Eliza felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. People began to gather around the square, murmuring and pointing at her. Some were frightened, others hopeful. They had seen her ride through the outlaws and knew she could defend herself. One older woman, her face lined with worry, stepped forward. You could be our sheriff," she said softly. "We need someone strong, someone brave. Someone who will not run from danger." Eliza looked around. The town was a mix of fear and hope. She could feel the weight of the town's future pressing on her. For a moment, she thought of turning away, leaving Redspire behind. But the memory of her husband and the love she had for her land and people gave her courage. "I don't want the job," she said quietly, her voice steady, "but I won't let this town fall into lawlessness." The people nodded, understanding. They did not need a sheriff who wanted the title. They needed a leader who could act, who could protect them. Eliza accepted the role, not out of desire but necessity. As she pinned the sheriff's star to her chest, a sense of determination filled her. She was no longer just a widow. She was the town's protector. The rest of the day passed with Eliza observing Redspire. She noticed the unusual technology scattered around, hovering carts, glowing energy lamps, and machines that moved without horses. There were signs that the town had been trading with strangers, possibly from far-off lands or other worlds. She did not yet understand the full danger, but she knew it was bigger than outlaws. Night fell, and the town took on a new look. Shadows stretched across the streets, and the glow from machines painted the buildings in strange colors. Eliza patrolled the streets, her eyes sharp. The people watched from their homes, some curious, some fearful. She moved silently, listening for any sound that seemed out of place. Then she heard it, a faint hum different from the wind or the machines. Following the sound, she came across a small alley where a group of men was meeting. They carried strange packages, glowing faintly. Eliza hid behind a barrel, watching carefully. She realized these men were planning something, smuggling items that were not from this world. Her mind raced. Red Spire was more than a lawless town. There were forces at play she did not yet understand. But she also knew one thing. If she could face these outlaws and survive, she could face whatever came next. The first night as sheriff passed without further incident, but Eliza stayed awake long after the town went quiet. She sat on the steps of the sheriff's office, looking out at the desert. The stars shone above, bright and clear. Somewhere beyond, dangers waited, but she would be ready. She had survived bandits, strange weapons, and the grief of losing her husband. She could survive Red Spire. By morning, news spread quickly. The widow had become sheriff. People whispered her name in hope and admiration. Children peeked from windows, dreaming of a town where justice might finally hold. Outlaws and strangers alike would now have to think twice before crossing Red Spire. Eliza prepared for her first official day in office. She cleaned her weapon, checked her horse, and reviewed the town map in her mind. There were the banks, the saloons, and the back alleys where danger often lurked. But there was also the desert, full of mysteries and threats. She knew that Red Spire's challenges were just beginning. The widow sheriff looked out at the horizon, the wind tugging at her hair. She felt a mix of fear and excitement. She was alone in many ways, but she was also stronger than she had ever been. The town needed her, and she would not fail them. Eliza Kane, once a grieving widow, was now the law of Red Spire. The deadliest town in the Wild West would soon learn that courage and determination could shine brighter than any weapon, old or new. And somewhere beyond the desert, forces she did not yet understand were watching, waiting for her next move. The story of the widow sheriff was just beginning. The morning sun rose over Red Spire, painting the town in gold and shadow. Eliza Kane mounted Daisy, her chestnut mare, and walked the streets with careful eyes. The town was quiet now, but Eliza knew silence was dangerous. Outlaws and strangers often waited for the right moment to strike, and with Red Spire left lawless for so long, tension had grown like weeds in the dust. Her first task as sheriff was clear: establish order. She started with the town square. People gathered quietly, whispering as she passed. She nodded to a few familiar faces, promising safety with her presence. The children peeked from windows, wide-eyed, as she adjusted the sheriff's star on her chest. She felt their trust weighing on her shoulders. Her first encounter came sooner than expected. A whistle cut through the morning air. A group of mounted riders appeared from the horizon, their horses kicking up clouds of dust. They were the Chromium Riders, a gang notorious in the region. Their leader, Jerk Voss, rode at the front, his cybernetic arm glinting in the sunlight. The arm held a strange weapon, pulsing with energy. Eliza felt a chill. She had heard whispers of the riders, men who had modified their bodies with alien tech, making them stronger and faster. But she refused to show fear. She tightened her grip on Daisy's reins. The riders approached the town, stopping just beyond the square. Jerk raised his weapon and spoke, his voice carrying easily over the wind. "Well, well," he said, a cruel smile on his face. "Red Spire has a new sheriff, a widow. Let's see how long you last." Eliza dismounted slowly, keeping her hands visible. "This town belongs to no one but the people," she said firmly. "I am the sheriff. If you want trouble, you will find it here." Jerk laughed, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of the townsfolk. "We like trouble. Step aside, widow, or we take what we want." Eliza studied the gang. They were well armed, moving with confidence, but she noticed their weaknesses. Their cybernetic enhancements made them fast, but their heavy weapons slowed their aim. She had a plan. She ran toward the edge of the square, drawing the riders' attention. "Come on," she shouted. Her voice carried across the town, sharp and commanding. The riders followed, their weapons ready. Eliza led them past the water pump, around the saloon, and toward the narrow alley behind the sheriff's office. She had prepared this path. She knew the town better than anyone, and she had already placed simple traps the night before: barrels, ropes, and a few energy nets from the sheriff's old supplies. As the riders entered the alley, the first trap triggered. A rope connected to a barrel swung across the path, knocking one of the riders from his horse. He hit the ground hard, and the others slowed, confused. Eliza took the opportunity to use her modified pistol. She aimed carefully, sending small energy pulses that disabled the cybernetic enhancements of two riders. Sparks flew from their arms and legs, and they fell, stumbling. The townsfolk watched in awe as their new sheriff moved with precision and courage. Jerk Voss roared in anger. "Stop her!" he shouted, raising his arm cannon. A bright beam shot toward Eliza, but she rolled behind a crate, the energy narrowly missing her. Daisy whinnied, stamping her hooves. Eliza knew she needed a bigger plan. She ran toward a high wooden platform near the general store, jumping onto it with surprising agility. From this vantage point, she could see the entire alley. She shouted to the townsfolk, "Get inside and stay safe." The riders advanced, their cybernetic parts sparking and buzzing. But Eliza had studied their movements. Using timing and skill, she dodged each attack, sending pulses from her pistol that jammed their weapons temporarily. One rider charged directly at her, but she kicked a barrel, sending him crashing into the wall. Jerk, furious, dismounted. He advanced on foot, his energy weapon humming dangerously. "You're good, widow," he said, "but not enough." Eliza stood her ground, her eyes sharp. She noticed the sun reflecting off his arm cannon, and an idea formed. Using the reflection, she aimed a small mirror on her belt, redirecting a pulse back at him. The beam struck Jerk's weapon, causing a small explosion. He fell to the ground, blinded but alive. The rest of the riders, seeing their leader defeated, hesitated. Eliza seized the moment, charging toward them. She moved with speed and precision, using her environment, the barrels, crates, and alley corners, to her advantage. One by one, the riders were forced to retreat, some disabled, some fleeing. The townsfolk erupted in cheers. Eliza landed softly on the ground, breathing heavily but standing tall. Daisy nickered, proud of her rider. Redspire had seen its first test of the new sheriff, and she had passed. But victory was only part of the story. Eliza knew the riders were just a symptom of a larger problem. While checking the alley, she discovered the packages they had been carrying. Strange devices glowing faintly with symbols she did not recognize. They were clearly not of this world. Eliza's mind raced. Redspire was not just a dangerous town, it was a crossroads of something much bigger. Alien tech was being smuggled in, and these outlaws were only the first wave of trouble. She carefully gathered the devices, deciding to study them later. For now, the town needed reassurance and safety. She walked back to the square, holding the devices. People followed quietly, their eyes wide with curiosity. Eliza addressed them, her voice steady. "This town is under my protection," she said. "No one will harm you while I am sheriff, but we must be ready. Danger is not gone, it is only beginning." An older man stepped forward, his face lined with worry. "Sheriff Kane," he said, "those men, they were not just outlaws. Something about them, it was not human. And the devices, they are not from here. What will we do?" Eliza looked at the glowing packages, then at the townsfolk. "We will learn," she said, "and we will defend ourselves. Redspire is our home. We will not let fear control us." The townsfolk nodded, a spark of hope lighting their eyes. For the first time in years, Redspire had someone who would stand against danger and protect them. Eliza realized that courage was contagious. Her bravery gave the people strength, and together they could face whatever came next. As night fell, Eliza patrolled the town again. She examined the alley, the packages, and the rooftops. She could see the desert beyond, dark and quiet. Somewhere out there, more trouble awaited, perhaps more riders or something worse. But she also felt ready. She had faced fear and survived. She had fought men with alien tech and lived. Daisy rested nearby, tired but alert. Eliza cleaned her pistol, preparing for the days ahead. She would need every skill, every ounce of courage to keep Redspire safe. But she was no longer just a widow. She was the sheriff, the protector, and a symbol of hope. By the end of the second day, the story of the widow sheriff spread quickly. Neighboring towns whispered her name, and even distant travelers spoke of Redspire, the town with a woman who could face any danger. Outlaws would think twice before challenging her, and the citizens felt a new sense of safety. Yet, Eliza knew her fight was far from over. The riders were only a warning. The devices they carried were a message of bigger threats beyond the town. She had defeated them, but the future held more dangers: smugglers, alien traders, and unknown forces in the desert. Red Spire was a small town, but it had become a stage for a much larger story. Eliza looked at the horizon, the stars beginning to peek through the night sky. Somewhere beyond, in the desert or beyond the mountains, forces were watching, planning, waiting. But she would be ready. She had learned to face fear, to act with courage, and to protect those who could not protect themselves. The widow sheriff stood tall in the square, her pistol at her side and her star shining faintly in the moonlight. Red Spire had found its protector, and Eliza Kane, once a grieving widow, had become a hero in her own right. The first showdown was over, but the adventure had just begun. The desert stretched far and wide beyond Red Spire, dry and silent under the blazing sun. Eliza Kane sat on a rocky outcrop, Daisy grazing nearby. She had spent the past day examining the strange devices the chromium riders had carried. They hummed faintly and glowed with colors she had never seen. She did not understand all their functions, but she could tell one thing: these were not from Earth. Eliza's thoughts were interrupted by a whisper from a town scout. A young man named Tommy, who often watched the desert for threats, rode up at a gallop. His eyes were wide with urgency. "Sheriff, something is out there. I saw lights, strange machines moving across the sand. Not like ours and not like any horse I've ever seen." Eliza's heart beat faster. She had expected trouble, but this confirmed her fears. The riders had been only a small part of a larger plan. Red Spire was a target, and the desert held secrets she needed to uncover. "We need to investigate," Eliza said firmly. She mounted Daisy, her pistol ready. Tommy followed on a smaller horse, holding a long rifle. They rode east toward the faint glimmer of lights on the horizon. As they approached, Eliza could see the source clearly. A hidden base, half buried in the canyon rocks, hummed with activity. Hovering lights moved along the walls, and strange creatures, humanoid but with glowing eyes and smooth silver skin, patrolled the area. Alien symbols adorned the base's entrance, pulsating with energy. Eliza's mind raced. This was no ordinary gang or outlaw hideout. This was alien. She had heard rumors of extraterrestrial visitors in the Wild West, but this was real. She studied the layout carefully. The canyon offered natural cover, and she knew she could get closer without being seen. Tommy looked uneasy. "Sheriff, those creatures, they are strong and fast. I don't know if we should go in." Eliza shook her head. "We cannot wait. If this base is where the riders got their tech, we must stop it before they bring more danger to Red Spire." Using the canyon rocks as cover, they approached the base. The creatures moved silently, their weapons glowing faintly. Eliza noticed a doorway that was less guarded. She motioned Tommy to follow quietly. Inside, the base was like nothing she had seen before. Machines hummed along the walls, and tables held glowing devices similar to those the riders carried. The air smelled faintly metallic. Eliza's heart pounded, but her mind remained sharp. She had faced outlaws and danger before, but now the stakes were higher. They moved carefully, stepping over cables and avoiding patrols. At the center of the base, they saw a group of aliens surrounding a large holographic map. Lines and symbols moved across it, showing towns, trade routes, and what looked like plans for Red Spire. Eliza realized the truth. The aliens were planning to control the frontier, starting with Red Spire. The riders were only a first wave meant to test the town's defenses. If she did not act, the entire region could fall into alien hands. "Tommy, we need to sabotage this," she whispered. "If we destroy their devices and confuse them, Red Spire will have a chance." Using what she had learned from the devices, Eliza carefully disconnected power conduits and set small energy pulses to jam the machinery. Sparks flew, and alarms began to sound. The aliens shouted in their strange language, and creatures moved to investigate. Eliza ducked behind a console, her pistol at the ready. Tommy fired a few shots at approaching guards, keeping them at bay. The base trembled as the machines sparked and fizzled. Then a figure appeared, a taller alien with glowing eyes and intricate silver armor. Its voice was calm but powerful. "Human, you interfere with forces beyond your understanding," it said. Eliza stepped forward, refusing to back down. "I will protect my town. I will not let you control it or harm my people." The alien studied her for a moment. It moved quickly, dodging her first shots and striking at the machines she tried to sabotage. Sparks flew and the floor shook. Eliza realized she needed a new strategy. She remembered the canyon outside where the rocks could collapse. She aimed at supports holding a large ceiling panel, sending it crashing down toward a cluster of alien machines. Energy pulses erupted as the panel crushed part of the machinery, forcing the aliens to retreat. The taller alien roared in frustration and lunged at her. Eliza fired her pistol, sending a pulse that temporarily disabled its arm. The creature fell back, giving her a chance to run toward the exit with Tommy. Outside, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the desert. Eliza looked back at the base. It was still active, but the sabotage had slowed the aliens' operations. They would need time to repair, and she had gained precious hours for Red Spire. "We can't let them regroup," she said to Tommy. "We need to warn the town and prepare defenses." They rode back as fast as Daisy could carry them. By the time they reached Red Spire, night had fallen. Eliza gathered the townsfolk in the square, explaining what she had seen. The glowing devices, the alien base, the riders, they were all connected. The threat was real, and preparation was essential. Some townsfolk were terrified, others doubtful, but Eliza's presence gave them courage. She showed them a few of the alien devices, explaining their effects and how they could be used defensively. The people listened carefully, understanding that their survival depended on learning quickly. Eliza spent the next few days training the town. She taught them to spot suspicious activity, to use basic energy traps, and to trust their instincts. Red Spire was small, but with preparation, it could be formidable. Meanwhile, Eliza could not shake the feeling that the taller alien she had faced was watching her. Its intelligence had been clear, and she suspected it would return, either to finish what she had started or to observe her further. She studied the desert nightly, scanning for any sign of movement. One evening, as the town slept, a faint light appeared on the horizon. Eliza stood on the sheriff's office steps, watching. The light moved quickly, almost like a star falling, but steadier, more deliberate. Daisy nickered softly, sensing the same tension. Eliza whispered to herself, "They're coming back." She knew that the fight for Red Spire was far from over. The riders had been only the first wave, the base a glimpse into a larger threat. The aliens were patient, intelligent, and dangerous. But Eliza was ready. She had learned to trust her skills, her courage, and her instincts. She had faced danger and survived. Red Spire depended on her, and she would not fail. The next morning, Eliza patrolled the streets, checking that all townsfolk were ready. The young, the old, and those who had once been hesitant now practiced drills under her watchful eye. She realized that leadership was not just about fighting. It was about inspiring others to be brave, to act with purpose, and to protect one another. She also prepared for the possibility that the taller alien, the one she had encountered in the base, would return with more strength. She set traps along the canyon edges, using both her knowledge of the town and the desert's natural features. Energy pulses, hidden pitfalls, and barricades would give Red Spire an advantage. As dusk fell once more, Eliza stood on the highest rooftop in town. The wind carried the scent of the desert, and the stars began to appear. Somewhere beyond the hills, forces she could not fully understand were watching, planning, waiting. But she felt ready. Eliza Kane, the widow sheriff, had faced outlaws and alien tech. She had infiltrated a hidden base, disrupted operations, and returned to protect her town. Red Spire's people were prepared, and for the first time in years, hope felt real. The story of the widow sheriff was far from over. The aliens would return and new dangers would rise. But Eliza was not afraid. She had the town behind her, her wits and her courage. The battle for Red Spire's future was beginning, and she would fight every step of the way. The desert wind howled across Red Spire as dawn broke. Eliza Kane stood on the steps of the sheriff's office, Daisy by her side, watching the horizon carefully. The events of the past weeks had changed the town. The riders had been defeated, the alien base partially sabotaged, and the townsfolk were no longer afraid. They were ready. But Eliza knew the real test was coming. The taller alien, the one who had confronted her in the base, would return, and with it, unknown forces. Eliza called the townsfolk to the square. They gathered quietly, alert and tense. Every face showed determination, reflecting the lessons Eliza had taught them. She held up her hand for silence. "Today," she said, "we defend Red Spire, not just our homes, not just our lives, but our town, our future. Outlaws and aliens may come. They will try to scare us. But we stand together, we fight, we survive, and we protect one another." A cheer rose from the crowd. Children, adults, and even older citizens nodded, some gripping simple weapons, others holding energy traps Eliza had shown them how to use. This was no longer a town waiting for danger. It was a town ready to face it. Hours later, the threat arrived. A group of riders, repaired and reinforced, came at first, riding on cybernetic horses that hissed and glowed. Behind them, hovering ships from the desert base appeared, casting eerie shadows over Redspire. And above it all, the taller alien commanding the forces watched silently, its glowing eyes scanning the town. Eliza's heart pounded, but her face was calm. She turned to her deputy, Tommy. "Positions, everyone in place. Remember your training." The town's defenders spread out quickly. Barricades went up, energy nets were activated, and traps were set. Eliza took a high position atop the general store, giving her a clear view of the town square and the approaches from the desert. The riders charged first. Their cybernetic horses slammed against the streets, kicking up clouds of dust. Eliza fired her pistol, sending precise pulses that jammed the rider's enhancements. Sparks flew as one horse stumbled, throwing its rider to the ground. The townsfolk, emboldened, joined in. Some used ropes and traditional weapons, while others triggered the energy traps Eliza had set. Jerk Voss appeared again, his arm cannon fixed and ready. He laughed cruelly. "You think you can stop us, Widow? This is bigger than you." Eliza aimed carefully. "Redspire is bigger than you," she shouted. A pulse from her pistol struck his arm, sending sparks and smoke flying. He fell to the ground, struggling with his weapon. The riders faltered, and the town gained the upper hand. But then the alien ships descended, hovering silently above. Energy beams shot from the ships, targeting barricades and buildings. The townsfolk ducked, and some cried out in fear. Eliza knew they needed a plan to counter the advanced technology. She signaled Tommy. "Use the mirrors, reflect the beams back." Tommy grabbed the polished surfaces they had prepared. He angled them carefully, redirecting the energy beams toward the ships. Sparks and flashes lit the sky as one ship was struck directly, its engines sputtering. The townsfolk cheered, gaining confidence. The taller alien landed near the town square. Its presence radiated power, and every defender froze for a moment. Eliza stepped forward, her pistol raised. She could feel the energy in the air, thick and heavy, but she did not falter. "You underestimate humans," she said. "We survive because we care, because we fight for each other." The alien moved swiftly, striking at Eliza. She dodged, rolled, and fired her pistol, disrupting its arm briefly. Sparks flew, but the alien did not fall. Instead, it raised its hand, creating a pulse that sent debris flying. Eliza realized she could not fight it head-on. She needed strategy. She shouted to the townsfolk. "Divide and trap them. Use the alleys and rooftops." The defenders scattered, moving to pre-planned positions. Energy traps and ropes blocked the alien's path. Jerk and the remaining riders attempted to regroup, but they were slowed by the traps. One by one, they were disabled or fled, leaving the alien alone in the square. Eliza knew she had one chance. She ran toward the alien, her pistol firing quick pulses. She dodged its attacks, weaving between debris and barricades. At the same time, she lured it toward the canyon edge, where she had placed a large energy net, powered by the devices from the riders and the base. The alien followed, aggressive and focused. As it stepped onto the net, it activated, holding the creature in place with crackling energy. Sparks danced along its silver armor, and it roared in frustration. Eliza approached cautiously, her pistol trained on it. "You will not take Redspire," she said firmly. The alien paused, studying her. In that moment, Eliza saw something unexpected: curiosity. The creature tilted its head, almost as if it recognized the determination in her eyes. It realized brute force alone could not win here. With careful aim, Eliza disabled the remaining devices controlling the net. The alien staggered but was forced to retreat. It leaped back, disappearing toward the hovering ships. The ships quickly rose and vanished into the desert, leaving Redspire behind. The town erupted in cheers. The people ran toward Eliza, surrounding her with smiles and laughter. Children climbed on Daisy, and adults shook her hands, praising her courage and leadership. For the first time in years, Redspire felt safe. Eliza looked around, seeing the impact of their collective efforts. Homes were damaged, streets were marked by energy blasts, but the town stood. The people had faced fear together and survived. She realized that leadership was not only about fighting, it was about teaching, inspiring, and protecting. That evening, the town gathered in the square. Fires burned, casting warm light over the faces of the defenders. Eliza spoke to them, her voice strong but kind. Today we showed what Red Spire can do. We stood together, fought together, and won together. The threats are not gone, but now we know that we are stronger than anything that comes our way. The townsfolk nodded, some wiping tears from their eyes. They had seen a widow rise above loss, take responsibility, and protect them all. Eliza had become more than a sheriff. She was a symbol of courage, hope, and human strength. Days passed, and Red Spire slowly repaired. Barricades were strengthened, new energy devices were set up for defense, and the townsfolk trained daily. Eliza continued to patrol the town, her presence a reminder that they were not alone. She often rode to the canyon edge, gazing at the horizon. Somewhere beyond the desert, she knew forces still watched. But she also knew that Red Spire was ready. The townspeople had learned to fight, to trust each other, and to act with courage. Eliza Kane, the widow sheriff, had faced outlaws, alien tech, and unknown dangers. She had protected her town, led her people, and earned their trust. Red Spire was no longer the deadliest town in the Wild West. It was a town with hope, unity, and strength. The story of the widow sheriff spread beyond the desert. Travelers spoke of Red Spire, of a woman who faced impossible odds, who fought with courage, and who inspired a town to rise above fear. Outlaws thought twice before riding into the town, and whispers of alien threats became stories of triumph rather than terror. At night, Eliza often sat atop the sheriff's office, looking at the stars. The desert was quiet, the wind gentle, and the town slept safely beneath her watch. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also the satisfaction of a job well done. The people depended on her, and she had not failed. Red Spire had a future now. The widow sheriff had brought law, courage, and hope. And while danger might come again, Eliza Kane knew one thing clearly: as long as she stood, Red Spire would never fall. The desert wind whispered through the town, carrying the stories of bravery, leadership, and unity. And somewhere in the distance, hidden beyond the mountains, unknown forces waited. But for now, Red Spire was safe, and its people had learned that courage could overcome any threat, human or alien. Eliza dismounted Daisy and walked into the town square one last time for the night. She looked at the faces around her, people who once feared, now smiling. She felt a deep sense of peace. The fight had been hard, but it had been worth it. The widow sheriff had turned Red Spire from a town of danger into a town of legend. And as she stood there, the stars above twinkling in the clear desert sky, Eliza Kane knew that wherever the future took her, she would face it with courage, strength, and the heart of a protector.